Well, welcome everyone to this episode of Wizards of the Couch. Thanks for joining me once again on July 15th. Danny Grimes and my three fellow couch wizards, Casey Rift, Brian in absentia Berg, and Jimmy Duffy. And we're going to be sitting around the virtual couch tonight talking games and gaming and cartography with Anna Meyer. And we're looking forward to having a couple of drinks and some great discussion. So before we get started, just a warning, it's an adult show, so, profanity is allowed. We just don't allow ourselves to string it together. So I'm particularly concerned about Anna because she really seems like she might get off the chain, and I don't want to. I don't want anything. I don't want anything untoward to happen. So anyway, I'm Danny Grimes. I'm a professional GM at Gen Con. I run a lot of Call of Cthulhu games there and at other conventions. I'm a terrain builder and a maker, and while I would normally be drinking whiskey, I am a little under the weather, so I am just having water tonight, but I will still drink along with everyone to whatever effect that may be. Matt?
Hey, good evening, and I'm Casey Rift online. It's Matt Everhart in person, I suppose. I'm the owner of Cobalt Con, and I guess one of the guys responsible for the Blackwood Society organized play. Tonight, I am not feeling under the weather, and I am drinking a local brew called, it's from a local brewing company here in Boise called Mad Swede, and it's Caber Toss This, you wee lad.
Wow. Where did you get that?
It's a Scottish ale, and I picked it up almost exclusively because of the name, so we'll see.
Bravo.
Marketing works. Works. I think next we would be seeing Brian, but unfortunately, Brian is missing in action. Yeah, it is unfortunate. He is the director of operations around here, such that it is, and he is also the director over at Total Party Kill Games. I'm sure if you've been to conventions, you have seen him because he is, I think, literally at every convention.
Everyone knows Brian. Yeah, he's just about every one.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and what's really amazing is how he gets there. We'll go into that when he comes again. Watching him roll up is always a treat. And Jimmy
Duffy here, Duff563, one of the wizards here, and also owner-operator of the Twitch channel, Praetor's Rejects. And we will be running games on the channel starting this week. New games on my channel, and Friday night, a beginner session of finally off the ground, Lost Mines of Phandelver. And then somewhere down the line, we'll get Sanctuary back on track. Matt,
no comment.
Be quiet. And we'll go from there. But yes, welcome everybody to the channel tonight. So shall we introduce somebody? Brian?
Yeah.
Danny?
So without further ado, this episode, we are going to talk about mapping worlds of imagination, cartography, drawing, all sorts of methods to convey what's going on when you move your little people around, or how do you gain that sense of spatial awareness in the game. So Anna Meyer is joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Welcome, Anna.
Thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So I'm super excited about this. I've been super excited for weeks since I knew this. In fact, I sent Anna, we sent a little package out to people to just kind of get to know them and so forth. And as soon as I had her name, I sent it immediately, and I wanted to be completely prepared because this is very cool. Some of you may know Anna because she has a expansive creation/curation project. It's a fan project for the world of Greyhawk. And when I tell you that it is extensive and detailed, it is right up my alley. You can keep zooming in. I was looking for names on trees, but thankfully,
not that much yet. It will come though.
Yeah. Anna, you reined it back in. And then also you may know her because she's done a lot of work with Wolfgang Bauer's Kobold Press lately, especially in the Midgard series. So I'm sure we're going to talk about all of that. and more cool stuff. I think Anna is going to stick in with us as long as possible tonight, so we're just going to kind of continue the conversation after the interview. So once again, welcome, Anna.
Thank you so much.
Let's not forget our patrons too. I think I saw a couple on.
Oh, please go ahead.
Yes.
Let's see. Well, Anna obviously is one of them, and our first
one.
Yep. Yeah, I was the first one. Yeah, I love your. I saw you one of your pilots or early pilots, and I thought it was so cool. So I was I want to see more of it. So yep.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny
like a
story.
gift that keeps giving. I just can't believe we got you on here.
Yeah, so it was that in and of itself is kind of a funny story because we were doing the pilot, as you said. It wasn't even episode 0 yet. We were just testing to make sure we could all connect, and all of a sudden Anna pops in, and we're like,
well,
oh,
it was
hi.
simply because I think it was Brian who had posted something in Facebook or something like that on his and since we are Facebook friends and we meet at Gen Con and other conventions and stuff, it just popped up and I was sitting working, so I just clicked on the link and there we went, and you were babbling and having fun and talk about interesting things. So
Yeah, I think babbling is an
Babbling's the right word. Yes.
Well, it was the piloting, man. You were just setting up the technology and all that stuff. So
If you want to help us with marketing, I think you've got a keen insight into our strengths.
No, I'm not really much of a marketing person. I love to sit by myself and tweak with things that no one else understands, except when you come to conventions or places like this, when all of a sudden people understand what I'm doing, and I just love that.
I think in past sessions we've talked about that's kind of the statement, the Magna Carta of gamers. It's a place where you can go and talk with people and they understand what you're talking about.
Yep.
And want to hear it and then want to share their story about the same thing.
Yep.
So we kind of roll out with 3 standard questions for everybody because we just like to get a little baseline of like where it all started and what you really like about gaming. So what was that moment in your life where you're like, D&D or whatever game it may have been that really attracted you to it?
I was dragged in without knowing what it was, not kicking, screaming, but almost, so to speak. I had a friend, and he wanted to have some. He needed some people in his gaming group, and he simply just said that, oh, we need someone else, and I was available, so they simply come on and sit down and play this game. I never read Tolkien. I didn't know what elves or any fantasy at all, so I sat down and played. And the first time it was kind of, oh, what crap is this? But then they convinced me to try again the second time, and actually then it was kind of, this is kind of cool. And then I understood what the whole concept was. I was supposed to play some warrior and run around, and something killed me the first time, and it wasn't that much fun. And I realized this is crappy. But the second time, after a couple of hours into it, then I understood the concept. I was 15 years old. It was back in Sweden, and we only had one set of dice for the whole table. So that was the premises. This 79, 80, something like that.
Dice were hard to come by, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. And we only had a Xerox copy of a copy of the rules or something like that someone had been in America, I had no clue who was, and got the I think it was the one of the early boxes, the brown box or the white box or something like that, or maybe the red box. I'm not really sure what those copies were, because then I got to grab one of the original red box for myself and one set of dice, and we started playing, and then it was awesome fun. I loved it, and I started reading the Tolkien books and started getting into it, and I just loved it from ever since.
Yeah, wow, it's I think you're the first. I would think you're the first person who said they came to it by someone else bringing them to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, so many people we've talked to so far have been like their own first GM, or like they were the one who was willing to buy the box, and so that's really interesting to hear their perspective. I give you full points for sticking it out past that first pointless death.
That was
because that's a hard thing to deal with. You're like,
but the good thing, it happened so early, and I never got a chance to really get in the know of the character and fall in love with my own character and all that. So it was still a game for me when the character died, and it didn't mean anything more. I think it's much worse if it happened and then we got a really cruel DM for a while, so we always died every session. So I was so happy the first time I had a character who could level up to 3rd level. That was like a year afterwards, and I was like, I was ecstatic for a week or something like that. It was simply amazing. And then so it was, but that was the early editions of D&D were very lethal too. So it was not only our game, they were all very lethal.
Yeah, that was one of those situations where she had Anna, the fighter, and when Anna died, then she came back with Santa.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. Number two, and
And
the
then
brother or the
Brianna,
sister
and
of, yeah,
Brianna.
exactly. You just add, yeah. And we usually took names from the Tolkien books or whatever. So and because we didn't have that much fantasy or something to work on, it takes kind of, you have to get in the groove, and I didn't have that. That took years. Yeah.
I secretly had that compendium that went with the Tolkien books that had all the names by Robert Forster or Foster, and none of my, I didn't tell my friends I had it, so I'd show up for games with these names. We're just like, where do you get these names? I'm like,
Yep.
Don't worry about it, man.
Yep.
Yeah, so playing back that long? You know, we were talking with Jen Page way earlier on. I've always had women in my game. Were there more women than you in that group?
No, not really. But on the other hand, no one else played. We had no one else to look up to, meaning there was no norm. There was only us. The first couple of years, we didn't know about anyone else who played. It took several years. So we didn't realize it was only for nerdy guys who and I didn't. So we had no reference. There was no one telling us what we did was wrong or whatever, or not fun or not cool. So there was an advantage of living way up in another country somewhere else, because there were other gamers around in Sweden, but we had no clue about it. This is before the internet. Well, we had color TV and tape recorders. That was about it. But we were so isolated that way. And then eventually there was one store in Gothenburg, like an hour away, that started storing game stuff and so on a couple of years later. So we could start buying dice, miniatures, and occasional books. And you basically had to order them, and then it took a month and you got it. So it was very isolated. So we were our own little bubble, so to speak.
Right.
Set our own norms and stuff, and you couldn't go on the internet, you couldn't even read anywhere how to play it. So when the dragon came, you simply devoured every page of it and try and distill in my 15-16-year-old person's English, so to speak. And that was also a good way for me to get into the language, because I basically have to start understanding not only the words but the meaning of it. I have to decipher how to do rules and stuff. So that was how we did it. And so I didn't have any concept of this was for guys or girls or anything like that. We just played. Yeah.
So what keeps you coming back? Like what's the thing that engaged you now all these years later? Your favorite,
now it is
your favorite thing. What's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing is that you have a world that you can live in a fantasy, so to speak. It's not so much the game and the statistics or the XP or the number crunching. For me, it's kind of a theater of the mind. You sit around the table and you have that kind of wonderful feeling of being in another world with others, and also running games, because after a couple of years I became the person in our gaming group that ran games most of the time. So that became to entertain others with my stories, and we made them together, and you build that game world, so to speak. That was simply just fantastic. That feeling is unbeatable. It's one of the biggest passions I had in my life. It's always been there since.
Yeah, that is cool. I didn't realize you were a game master. That's awesome.
That's after a couple of years.
Play it next time, yeah.
Yeah, so after a couple of years, the guy that started our gaming group, he took off and got a scholarship somewhere and started education and disappeared. And I became the person that at first we took turns, and when we'd done it 2 or 3 times, everyone pointed at me and said, "No, you run the games from now on." And that became it, so to speak. And then I found the Greyhawk box. That was just before that, because I was always wondering, because the DM, where does he get all these cool stories from? And they're unique and all that. And I didn't realize he was reading Lord of the Rings and other fantasy and just paraphrased from it, basically. And then when the Greyhawk box came, I started reading it in the store and was like, this is where it comes from. And I bought it in secret and read it through. And then I've run my games in Greyhawk ever since. And that's back in '83 when it came out.
So were maps part of that even early on?
Yes. Yeah. I always loved maps and landscapes. But so the thing for me was that very quickly I realized when reading Dragon magazine that everyone who games, I guess we all dream about being a game designer or design new rules or monsters and stories and write adventures and all that. But I realized fairly quickly that I wasn't as good as a lot of other people who wrote these things. But when it came to maps, that was my kind of niche, so to speak. I'm so interested in landscapes, and I'm an avid nature photographer, hiker. I've been flying planes, so I've looked at the world from above, so to speak. So I'm so used to landscape, and I wanted to know what the fantasy world looked like. And so I simply wanted a map that showed me what Greyhawk looked like, so it can inspire me, and so I know what little hill to build a castle on, or where the orcs should do the kind of do the encounter, where should it be, where should they ambush the party, and stuff like that. So that became my thing, and I realized that most cartographers, they do dungeons. There's like 1,000 awesome artists that do dungeons, but not that many that do the setting maps.
Yeah, there aren't that many.
Yeah, so that became my niche. That's when I realized that's where I'm competitive, so to speak. Then I'm good enough to be one of the best ones in the world on that little niche.
How are they competitive? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So yeah, and that right there, I'm really interested in hearing more about, because I really think that the thing that motivates us to see the space in our heads and want to somehow transcribe it. But so just a couple more, one more softball, and then a really critical cartography question. And this could be a shorter answer if you want. Best GM you ever had and why? And you can include yourself.
No, not myself. Probably the best DM I've ever had is a friend, Brian Darnell. He lives in Hemet, used to live in Hemet. Now he moved to Portland a few months ago. I was up on his wedding a couple of weeks ago and drove up to Portland from sunny California and then back again. And he is probably the best DM I've ever had. He's just simply fantastic. He knows the rules, and he runs the game so damn fluid. It's kind of just amazing. And so he's probably the best. And I've played with a lot of DMs over the years, but in many ways, he is the best kind of, I would say, overall. I've had better DMs who have been better storytellers, or the better ones organizing the game, but he's kind of hitting that sweet spot. He's an entertainer, and he has all the facts and all the crunch and all that so he's kind of a good mix between the DM that knows everything and the DM that just is awesome to listen to. So yeah.
Cool. So the cartography specific question, although I think now I might have a guess: hexes or grids?
When it comes to dungeon maps, I want grids. But when it comes to overland maps, I don't want any of it. I don't want any more than necessary. I can have that as an overlay occasionally, but I don't want any crappy hexes or any of that unless they're needed, so to speak.
Is that just a key in the bottom saying how in inches, 50 miles or whatever?
And I use maps digitally, and I print them only to show at conventions and stuff. When I'm running games, I'm purely digital nowadays. So I can have a hex version when I need it, and not that's it. I don't want to have hexes permanently or squares or any of that.
Cool. So, well, I guess what we were talking about before. This started out as a hobby, but then there's always that point, when Wizards finally had the SRD available and all that, where we all felt like we could participate in a more full way. And that was a lot of people's jumping off point to enter into the industry rather than just being a hobbyist. So what was it that started you in like formal map design?
It was the when I moved 8.5 years ago, I moved to California, and I realized now I quit my job. Ended my career. I moved here. I need something to do. So I was like, let's sit down and finish my Greyhawk map. I started doing the map in 1997, 98. So it's kind of, it was like 10 years. And I worked for like 3-4 years on it, over 10 years as a hobby from time to time. And I realized now I'm going to sit down and finish it. And I did that, and it took about 2.5 years. And before then, at the end of it, when it was almost done, then Wolfgang Bauer reached out to me. Oh, can you start doing maps for me? And I started doing that, and a couple of other publishers started reaching out. I was Annie nominated for my Greyhawk map, and it just rolled on. And things started coming in, and I finished my Greyhawk map, and now through Patreon, that's half my income, so to speak, and half my time is devoted to my project, my hobby, and the other half is doing maps for publishers and stuff. Yeah,
that is really inspiring, because I spend a lot more time drawing maps to a degree for myself than I ever would. The idea, especially of your Greyhawk map. I mean, if anybody has not seen this, we can put the link down in the doobly-doo below at some point. But it is truly staggering. For me, I always think of things like that in layers. So when you obviously I have the original maps, and that has a ton of information, but you go so much further than that. Like, where do you source that information? How do you know?
Practically, what I did was that I collected I was a part owner of a game store for like 10, 15 years and back in Sweden. So when they were releasing stuff from TSR, I simply, when I got their catalog, I simply say, I want this and this and this and this. And every month there was a little box for me in the store. So I simply took that and put it in my shelves. So over the years, I got a really good collection of Greyhawk material, Greyhawk related material that way. And then when the internet came around, I started going to all the websites and stuff, and I worked in kind of things that we had early access to the internet, and so we had a good IT department. So they actually wrote me a script that could crawl the internet. This is the early 90s. So I simply, so this is before Alta Vista and all that. So we crawled the internet and simply for the word Greyhawk. So there was a lot of camping related stuff that I had to weed out in the beginning, but after a while, and then the Living Greyhawk campaign came around, and I started getting a little bit of feedback, and people started sending me stuff. So I simply collected information and put it in a database and kept doing it for years and years and years. So now I basically have a digital collection of all the information that has ever been published about Greyhawk, and then some. Because I've got some cool stuff that people that worked with Greyhawk over the years have sent me stuff that has never been published, and their ideas and stuff like that. So and I read everything. I read all the fan stuff, everything I've gotten hold of Greyhawk. I've read it. So when I worked on an area, I simply collected all the information I had and made a bundle of like 200 pages, printed them out, and had them as reading. I had a highlighted marker and just highlighted everything that was interesting, and then I did it digitally when I got an iPad. So then I had a PDF and I just highlighted the stuff. And then I took a note of every highlight and started putting it on the map. So I worked on, and then that was how it started. And then I had all my fans. So I put it up on the internet, and people criticized the hell out of it. And that way they get me the rest. That's my quality control team, so to speak. Yeah.
The most brutal quality control team you can expose yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Now my maps get scrutinized by a lot of the people that wrote the stuff. So now I have access to that, and they kind of keep an eye on it. It's like I'm working on Lindor Isles to redo them in way more detailed, and then I will get help of Len Lakofkan. It's his turf. He invented it. So that way we can do the definitive version of the Lindor Isles map, so to speak. So,
I am so glad that was your answer. That basically you invented a rabbit hole and you went all the way down it.
Yeah, just kept doing it and kept in. And the interesting thing is, you go back 10 years ago, there was no market for stuff like this. Today, in today's world, there is a job. If you do this and you get really, really good at something that is this narrow, since there is a world market for stuff, you can actually earn a decent, or at least kind of barely, you can pay your bills at least doing this. But my advice to anyone: don't go into the RPG business in order to make money. No. It's a dead end with money. But I'm in that spot that I don't have a family to feed, and I don't have to have kids to send through college and a big mortgage to pay and stuff like that. So that way I can actually do this full time.
That's interesting. I tend to agree with you. I think all of us feel, similarly. I think Brian, who's not here, I'll speak for Brian. He said there's nobody really properly famous in role-playing.
Well, there are now. There are.
But see, I said this to him. I said, well, there are a few people who are properly famous. And apparently Forbes thinks that there's 40 million of us.
Oh, exactly. And that's what I mean. I think we will have our first people that earn $1 million a year in a couple of years in this. It's starting to be like sports, meaning there are a mass of people who love to do this, and they have to pay. And then you start having a little bit of people that a fair bit amount that earns a little bit of money. And then you have a much smaller that earns enough to scrape by, and then you have a tiny little elite at the top that earns a hell of a lot of money. And
Right.
I'm like in that kind of middle part where you can scrape by, so to speak.
Yeah, I was also encouraged to hear you say how much you love the outdoor map too, because
Yeah.
when I love drawing indoor maps. I can draw a fair dungeon, but my favorite is also, I want to see where the cities are. I'm much more interested in running a political game generally.
Yeah.
So I like a city map or
Mhm.
a country map,
Yeah.
rather than the interior of a building. Plus, I think that's pretty, that's been done a lot.
Yeah.
When I run games, I frequently just scour Google until I see a shot of something that I think that's inspiring, and that's
Yeah.
my end now.
Yeah,
So,
but it also depends on how you run the game, because I've been as a player, been in some awesome campaigns that basically just go from indoor to indoor scene. They're like a sitcom, but they're still fantastic games. But the campaign world is just like a backdrop that is there to give some flavors between, meaning the names are different from towns and cities, but it's all about each adventure location, and there might be an encounter location on the way. And for me, that's a perfect way to run a game and a campaign, and I can really enjoy playing in it. But that's not the way I run it. I want to have a living world where the characters can go anywhere, and I don't know how the campaign will end. I just know who the creatures and monsters and the inhabitants are in an area and what it looks like, and then I just let them loose and see what happens.
So when we're going to be able to come back to some of these and get even more in depth later on, after our first little segment. But I do want to say, you mentioned being purely digital. So VTT is considered de rigueur now. If you're going to put out a game, you got to have your VTT assets set up. As an avowed like Adobe Suite person, like I know how to create all those assets, but it's just like required now. So how do you approach that? I mean, I assume you agree with that, or no?
Yeah. I've used a multitude of tools, but I've started using Roll20 and D20 Pro back in the day, but I'm gravitating towards Fantasy Grounds now, I think. But that they are starting to come up to be the most premier, so to speak. So yeah, so I'm gravitating towards that. So it will be more and more of it. And also run Zoom. That's one of the reasons I got a pro subscription of Zoom, both for Twitch things and so on, but also for gaming. So I can share my screen, whether that's Photoshop or my big Illustrator map, and I can I can fog it over and I can blur things they don't know about and stuff. So I can show whatever window I have, and then I have a tool called RealmWorks where I have all my notes on my campaign and stuff like that. And then now I have Dungeon Fog. I got licensed, so I can make my dungeon maps and stuff in it, and I have all my 3D tools and stuff that I use for my professional mapping. So it's just a multitude of tools and virtual and screen share. So that's so that's how I scrape by. But I'm pretty sure that within 5 years, you will have someone who will basically have the character management, campaign management, and a virtual tabletop and networking all in one tool. And it will probably take about 5 years until we're there. But that's my expectation, is that about 5 years from now, there will be the holy grail tool that can basically do the whole thing in one tool. But we're far from it yet.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I think I think we're seeing the beginnings of that now with World Anvil, for example.
Exactly, and they have the Project Deus. That's the closest I've seen to moving in that direction. So there will be some first ones that are kind of so and so, and there will be, but it will probably take 5 years until you have something that is so good and bulletproof that it will reach the mass market, like Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds are done now within the virtual tabletop tools, or Hero Lab have done in character management and stuff. So but that's my roughly 5 years from now, we will have a tool that is good enough that can basically handle everything digitally.
Yeah, and Danny was talking about zooming in on your maps all the way down, and that's, I think, Project Deus, if they end up getting it like they want it, that's what it'll be. You'll have Greyhawk map, and then you zoom down to a city and zoom down to the building, and then
and one of the key things I think is that my map is kind of cool to look at, but I want each DM to be able to modify it, meaning that city is now sacked, so make a ruin out of it, and that road leads that way, and I want a little village here, and now we have an orc's nest, or the Sahagin lair here, then I add that symbol and write the name. So I want the maps to be a living thing, because in my sessions I edit the map every session. session. I add things and change things every session. So that's why I don't like print maps much, because it's just a waste of paper for me. Next session, I'm screwed and I have to print it again. So I want every DM who use my maps to be able to do what I do. Now it requires Illustrator and a lot of knowledge in Illustrator to do it, but I'm trying to find solutions for it. And right now we're not there yet, but we're getting there quickly.
Yeah, it'll be nice when people can collaborate. So,
Yep.
you know, you've already given us some really interesting industry insights. I kind of was hoping that's the way it would go too, because I think part of the point of this show is not just for people who are just interested in playing D&D or running a game, but want to kind of know, like, what's it like, you know, to do this for a living, or maybe not even do it for a living, but do it semi-professionally, to do it for real. So rather than ask you to tell you how your future competition can help be helped, I was going to ask about how to talk about new and upcoming cartographers, but maybe that question changes to, like, you're running a game and you're about to make a map. Like, what are the most important things to convey? Let's say you only had a couple of hours to put together a map for a game. Like, what's your advice to someone on the important things to convey in that map?
First, for me, there's two. When it comes now, we're talking big maps that covers like a barony or a kingdom or a setting first, because they're different from location maps like in house or dungeon. But let's take the large area map. I want to have an area where we're going to have the next campaign or the next number of sessions. First of all, for me, there's two kinds of maps. One is the map that the DM uses to inspire and plan and figure out where things are in the world. The kind of the accurate map that has a lot of information. And it's also inspirational, that the DM will show the players gradually as they progress, meaning so they should be able to track their going from town here out to the dungeon or out to the elven tree or the marches where the evil cult is or something like that. So that's one map, and then the other map is let's say the characters want to say that, okay, we go to the big city to get a map that covers the kingdom, and or their patron that gives them the mission will simply hand over a map. That's a completely different map. My Greyhawk map is not something I want to hand over to the players. But if they go and buy a map, they will get something scribbly that is sketchy and look like a medieval parchment. So I would first figure out, I need a sketchy map that shows me as a DM where things are, and I can fill in the details and realize it doesn't need to look good. It just needs to work for you. And that's the key. So start figuring out the big lays of the land, meaning if you say, okay, this is the kingdom where everything is going to happen, then sketch out the kingdom. And if things don't have to match down to even half a mile, things can be 50 miles within. First decide, is this a kingdom that is 1,000 miles across, or is 100 miles, or is there a coastline, major rivers, the big features? And once you have the majority of the features dialed in, then you can start making more accurate ones of the little area. And don't map in detail before the players are there, so to speak, and kind of put it in gradually, work it in, and don't try to make a masterpiece before you run the campaign. I don't do that. If I come to an area and I fill in the details as I plan the game, I say, okay, now we need a village here and we need some a keep there, and I give it a name, and then so kind of my campaign map evolves over for each session, basically.
Yeah, for sure. As quickly as players can derail a game session.
Yep.
You wouldn't want to go too far into your.
Yep. But if you're really good at landscapes or something, you can kind of do the landscape before and then fill in the details as it. That's what I've done with Greyhawk. I now have my canvas that I can play on, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't agree more. That I tell my players frequently, I'm basically backing up away from them on the road as they come at me, and I'm just trying to keep their awareness of enough things so that they can make decent decisions, and I don't have to work too hard with extraneous information that won't ever be used.
Yeah, and try make them make non-good decisions, so to speak. To try and make them to make bad decisions.
Yes,
you derail them deliberately at times. That's also
yes. Yeah, that's the old finger on the scales rule. You know, how heavy is that finger, and then how often do you use it? Some games get off the rails pretty quickly and easily. Well, I think We're going to take just a break here for a second while we get ready for our next segment. We're going to talk a little about virtual tabletop gaming. We can all join in the discussion, but we do. I guess we should mention that we're going to be discussing Dungeon Fog, World Anvil, Painter Studio Incarnate in a upcoming segment. So those are things that like everybody kind of has access to in this space, and people can quickly come up with quite good looking maps. So people who like me, who really want it to look pretty, they still have quite some limitations, but I encourage people to go look at those tools, and we can get those links probably somewhere in the doobly-doo at some point. But I guess,
That doobly-doo.
take a look at it.
Hashtag shirt. Can I get a shirt that's double.
Hashtag that says doobly-doo on it. Yeah. So, Jimmy, you were going to talk a little bit about, I'm sure that Fantasy Grounds is going to come up.
Fantasy Grounds.
And World Anvil, and I know Matt's going to have something to say about World Anvil as well.
Anvil.
I do virtual tabletop, but I'm only local, so I don't broadcast or do anything like that. So I can only speak to the table with the TV in it that I use. I'll get to that when it's my turn. So, Jimmy, if you kind of want to just talk a little bit about, what your setup is and why you do things the way you do them, and just go for it.
Well, yeah, I'd be more than glad to. And yes, I am a proponent of the Fantasy Grounds platform. And some of the stuff that
Got an upgrade or something coming pretty soon.
there's something called Unity, and it's something kind of big for this platform, which is aged like fine wine. But now it is time for a overhaul to go into the new millennium and bring up a 64-bit engine. So Doug and the guys over at Smiteworks have put that together. So it should be out at the end of the year. Well, the Kickstarter was extremely successful for them. So we congratulate them on that, and we look forward to seeing what they're doing. And the map making, I would love to be able to show that feature, but don't have that copy yet. But the abilities to make like Anna was talking about, some of the dungeon mapping and stuff on the fly, I am truly looking forward to, so that if a scenario or something comes up in a game, and I don't have that particular map at the moment, you can draw it right then and there and make that scenario work out to continue the gameplay. But with just some of the showcasing, what we use right now for the mapping is the first thing is an extension that we load up in the Fantasy Grounds interface on your data area. Where did it go? I had it right in front of me. Enhanced Images. It's an extension that's available on the forum. What this will do is allow you to add layers to the map, so that if I have a map, and I'll bring up Fantasy Grounds here real quick. Let me load up this lovely interface. And bring up a campaign, and we're going to go to Battlegrounds, even though load this up real quick. But what we'll do is I can take a map, which we have one of Anna's we're going to showcase here, but I want to lay in some assets that may be extra needed for the encounter. And what we'll do here when it loads up is I'm going to add a little campfire to the terrain map, and then I'll lock that asset down so that the players can still see it, but they can't interact and mess with it. So
yes,
okay, and that then allows us with Anna and some of the other cartographers that use their graphic assets. We love, for map makers and guys that run Fantasy Grounds, I'm saying, the more maps you can give us, the more assets I can get a hold of, the more stuff we get to have fun with. Because I'm not a creator, but I am the creator when I get into this. And
not gridded, right? And no grid.
Yes, so that I was going to say that, because this, I don't believe that, I can't remember this. We'll load up this map here real quick. I think it has a small faint grid on it. But yes, the Fantasy Grounds group, we don't like grids on the maps. We prefer, I think I had taken it off. So if I pull,
I should have given you the non-gridded, or the ones with the one, because I had both of them. They will be printed in a grid for the printed version, and a non-grid for the BTT version.
Well, that was Danny had spoke on the question a little bit, and I was it was one of the questions I wanted to ask, was chatting with you when you're looking at the maps and on the technical side of incorporating the grids or no grids, but looking at it from the virtual tabletop side, what are those parameters? You just create the map and then print it, and make it a digital image based on the platform they're off of, because I know Fantasy Grounds and the Roll20 side, the mapping size is a little different. But what technical, what goes in your head on the technical side when you're creating that map?
Yeah, the problem is that print, you need really high resolution. The print, then you're talking 300 DPI or something, 300 little dots per inch, meaning something that covers a book page should be 5,000 by 7 by 5,000 pixels or something like that in order to look really good on a printed. And we're talking a poster map 24 by 36, we're up in the 20,000 pixels. But a map in Fantasy Grounds, that I think the limit is still 1,000 pixels. That's it, or something like that. You can't do it much bigger. So yeah. So you immediately run into huge problems, because you have to create it for the book, because that's what you get paid for to do first, and then you have to scale it down. And books, they have the problem that they have the letter format usually. So that means that and VTTs, then it's a square format, because you simply can you can go in squares. So right now there is the technical specifications are very different depending on one media or the other, so to speak. So that's still a problem. I think it will change, because I think that digital will probably be the premier way of the normal way of distributing content within a few years, and the printed map will be a separate version. It will be a coffee table book, so to speak.
Like vinyl.
Unfortunately,
exactly.
yes. Like vinyl. Yeah, that's true, Danny.
I think that's where because I don't think that books will go away at all, but they will be different. They will not be used for lookup rules and for use at the game table, but they will be used to inspire and to show people I have an awesome collection, and to impress your relatives and stuff like that, that you have the coolest gaming books ever. That's where I think they will be in the future.
I think I'm not even sure that future's that far off. I mean, quite honestly.
Yeah. That's everything I'm buying now. Yeah, it's PDF or digital stuff. For
I've got, let's say I can't see it on here, but back. Oh yeah, right there. So I've got I went and got the collector's edition of the whole box set for 5th edition, and it's still in the cellophane. I didn't even unwrap it. I've got the PDF. I've got the PDF version as well, so don't need to.
Funny you should mention that too. This is a complete aside, but I came across this thing called AnyFlip. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but it's a book format. I found Lost Minds of Fandelver online in this format. I don't know. It was just like out in the open. So I click on it, and it's like a flippable page. Now, I'm sure that the content itself was not licensed to be put up there like that, but like that is great, because it feels like on your screen. If you had a 24-inch monitor in front of you and it was touch, you could just flip those pages. You could size, all that kind of stuff. Very cool.
All right. Well, but it's okay. It's example. So yes, we have the grid version, but we can with Fantasy Grounds, and yes, I think I saw Dale open up. The Unity engine will actually address that in the maps. Now will actually be able to grow exponentially within the interface, because of the memory systems that the machines that you're going to be limited by what you're running on.
Yeah, you go to 64-bit, I guess. I hope.
Pretty much, yes. It is 64-bit all the way, and with that creating of the maps and the dynamic lighting and the dynamic I know Roll20 already has the dynamic line of sight. Fantasy Grounds is going to have that, and then they're going to have the effects, the weather effects, and other movement actually being able to put onto the map and on the on the overlay. But the main thing, real quick, is just showing that on the grid version. I'm going to slap one down here real quick. What we like to do is we've got this interface that allows, up here at the top, I've got layers. And so what I do is I go down to the bottom layer, and I can add in a campground here. And now when I lock that layer and I come back up to the top, I can no longer, so it's just one of the simple things that you can do inside Fantasy Grounds to add extra flavor to the map that you may not get in here, and I could add in tents if I wanted to, and play around, and then I can make my little camp, and here I go, and now my players cannot mess. Whoops, I put it on the wrong layer. That would be why. Ooh, don't show that, Duff. Cut that in editing. And then
catch it in post.
So, exactly. Catch it in post. So, but anyway, so that's then the Fantasy Ground side. That is some of the, in this interface right now, some of the simple tricks of the trade that you can do to give these lovely maps that we have in front of us here. to showcase and have our players enjoy with the artist permission also. So
Oh yes,
sure.
yep, definitely, yep. That was the idea. Yeah.
Exactly right.
I will say that resizing and placing stuff definitely is easier, even in the current version of Fantasy Grounds, than it is in Roll20. And as an aside, for those who are going to stick around right after the show, I'll do the same thing in Roll20 to kind of show you how that works as well. Anna, that brings up a question for me. So, are you getting full detailed map requests, or are you getting? Are you watching the stream? Were you able to see what map you pulled up with the river and the banks on both sides?
I think it was Zombie
Sky Press.
There you
Yeah,
go.
this was Scott
Yeah,
Gable. He did it for, I forgot what it was, something fairies, something like that. It's like 2 years ago or something. And I got the book. So this one was simply, he had some descriptions of I think it was 5 different locations, and I just went wild with it. And that's one of my first tries making local area maps. I'd never done them before, but thanks to using the same, and I'm starting to get my Photoshop mojo, so to speak. So now I'm starting to be enough of an expert in Photoshop that I can take almost any texture and layer styles. And when I see a map now, I can understand how it's done. I'm starting to get so good at textures and layering and styles and blend modes and stuff, so I can kind of look at it and see, that's how they done it. So now I can kind of steal ideas just from seeing it. I don't have to steal the pictures, pixels. I can just see it. And you also have the tools that can generate wood textures or stone textures or whatever. So I have these, that grass or whatever material I want. I can put it in and mixture with it, and out comes a seamless. How many pixel size I want, so to speak, of a wooden floor or some sort of stone tile or whatever. Yeah. So that's the tool you need as a professional. But the problem is that each of these tools cost like $100 a year, or some of them cost $50 a month and stuff like that. So that's the difference from when you're just doing it for your own games. You can't pay $200 a month doing it. But when you do it full time, all of a sudden subscriptions make sense, because it's perfect. You know how much it will cost each month to stay in your job, and you get new cool stuff all the time. So for me as a professional, subscriptions actually makes perfect sense. But I can understand if I just want to use a tool for my games, I don't want to spend dollars every month whether I work on it or not.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a place that a lot of people take for granted, people being consumers of a product, because they understand a lot of the costs that go into that, whether it's supplies or in this case subscriptions. I mean, there's a substantial amount of money that has to go in just to be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So my question on that was, do you get the request for the river and the riverbanks and the trees, and then they go in and put a camp in somewhere, or it was?
It normally is not. The interesting, and I'm kind of surprised by that, because when you work professionally on this, you get very vague art orders, and often, especially when you work on big maps, is that the text is often not written, and if it's being written, it's being re-edited and stuff, and you have to read some Google Doc or Word document that is put together in text. So what you usually do is I sketch it out, work a little bit, and then send it over, and they criticize it, and then come back again, and I send like a weekly update, and we work from there, so to speak. And also to have, now I work, the latest project I'm working with for Cobalt Press. Thankfully, Brian Susskind, one of the main writers on that new upcoming project, he lives on the other side of the hills, so I kind of pop over like once every 10 days or so, and we've sitting down and taken half in a day and go over all the sketches, and then I go home and work a bit, and he sits and writes, and then we kind of get together again a week or 2 weeks later and do it again, or you email back and forth. So it's a lot of, so you constantly have to learn criticism. So I've learned that criticism is the way to go forward, so to speak. So you can never be proud and say, "Oh, I nailed it. This is the way it's going to be." No, someone comes and say, "No, I don't want that. That's the color is wrong," or whatever. So you just have to. That's one of the things of being a professional. You work in order to fulfill someone else idea of how things should be. But you also have to be smart and sometimes stand your ground a bit and suggest things and change things without being asked, just because I feel like this works better, so to speak. And also when they come up with ideas that might take a longer time, then you simply say, well, what should I don't do? And so that's kind of a really important thing. And I can see that from a lot of people that come in early and want to talk about things. They are dead certain this is the way to do it, and they get angry if it's not right and whatever. So to be able to handle criticism is really important.
One of the questions, I came up through architecture school, so I had to learn from a very tender age that we called them crits, and you had to sit through these crits, and you'd be juried by 4 or 5 people, and maybe one of them would have a heart, and the rest of them were just like, and they were making us better. They were sharpening the knives. But it was a painful process, but it taught me that I just had to explain things clearly, but I wasn't necessarily going to be right. Years later, after many years as a professional graphic designer, now going on 20 years, I will sometimes say to the client, so how important is it for all this to make sense? And then they'll say, well, it's pretty important. I'm like, well, then you probably shouldn't do this or this or this, because it makes no sense. And I can only imagine if I ever was lucky enough to be commissioned to do some maps, there'll come that moment when they say, I want the river flowing north into the mountains. And
there you have the problem is that, and one of the reasons that I realized fairly quickly, the reason they hire me is because they don't think about stuff like that. They don't think much about world design in detail. They don't think about how landscapes work and so on. So you have to kind of pick their brains a bit. You have to come with these questions and very early on come and say that, okay, so if we have this, then that must be a high plateau. And if you have a jungle here and there's snowy there, then that means that area must be high up, or there must be some magic or whatever. So when they come up with a world design, I have to interpret it and tell them what that actually means, and whether it's natural geography, which I think most fantasy worlds probably works best if most rivers flow downhill and most areas follow the natural laws of physics and normal stuff. And then you have the magic and the extras and the fantastic as a spicing on top, so to speak, that you sprinkle in here and there to make it more fun. The mountains can be higher and the canyons deeper and stuff like that. You might have an occasional river that flows uphill and stuff, but that should be the exception, according to me. Otherwise, it will be confusing, I think. But it's also important to try and get the flavor for what kind of game setting it is and kind of rules set. Now, most of the maps I've done have been for D&D or similar game systems, or it's forks, so to speak. But it's really important. It's like, I can imagine if I go to sci-fi or do something for cyberpunk or steampunk, then all of a sudden you need to tweak the settings and steampunk symbols and what fonts you use and stuff like that is also really important. Symbols. Yeah, so there's so many of these kind of little nuances, but that's what I'm getting paid to think about that, to spend 3 hours just testing which font works the best and then send it out, because that's what they pay me to do these thinking and think a lot about stuff that the one writing the stories or the crunch or do the monster stats should not have to worry about this at all.
Cool.
Yeah, so when this probably belonged more properly back in the previous segment we were talking about virtual, but when you create a map, or anybody creates a map, I guess anybody can answer this question.
Yeah.
Is everything created on its own layer? Like if you're going to draw a little fire pit there on your map or whatever, do you create all that separately with the knowledge in mind that eventually it will be exported as all separate pieces?
Oh yeah. You work and when I do my big setting maps, then I first do in 3D, because I create a virtual 3D terrain, meaning I create a real 3D terrain that you can look at from any angle. When I do the new setting maps, the current existing Greyhawk map is done with early version, 20-year-old tools. That they are ancient, they're Stone Age. But Midgard maps and Southlands and so on, they are done using way better maps these days. And there you have a perfect example of that's I did for Gryffindor games. And these are you can you don't necessarily have to look at them from top down. So the first is 3D programming, and then it's 3D rendering, and then you render things like textures and whatever, and then you take them into Photoshop and you do a lot of Photoshop editing, and you work on the textures and blending and stuff. And then you have sometimes 50 layers or 100 layers. And
Easily.
yeah, and I can have files that are 40 to 50 gigabyte in size when I'm working, and then you merge them down and flatten them, take them into Illustrator, and then I put the roads and the labels and the borders and all that stuff in there, and then export out the final map. Those are the three kind of main steps. So, and I kind of like it because the first one is very technical. It's visual programming. The second one is very artistic. You sit there and paint and paint and paint. And then the third part, you sit and do texting, and it's kind of tweaking and crafting and stuff like that. Feels more like it. And then you're done, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't do the 3D step, but that sounds really similar to how I do it. I do the illustration first, so I know where all the lines are. Then I underpaint on all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, you often do like a sketching in Illustrator real quick, just to where the coastline should be or something like that. And then you put it in there, so you have a kind of a sketchy map to work from. Yep.
So how far do you, just a technical question, how far do you take it before you show it that first time?
Usually the first thing I do is that I get the topography right, because I want to know where the mountain ranges are, where the major rivers are, where the coastlines are. That's the thing. So, and that is often tricky for a lot of my customers, the clients that I work for, is that for them, they think fantasy. They want to see a Tolkien map and they want to see these drawings. So when I show them something that looks very scientific, they kind of go back and I say, well, where's the jungle? I said, trees are no, I just want to know the topography. I want to know where is it high as the Himalayas, where the big flat lowlands and stuff like that. So and the characteristics that way. And then we go into texturing, and then we put the trees on there and the forest and all that. So I want to have the topography done first. And that's the wonderful thing, that now I work for Kobo Press. We've done 3 big projects. So now it's kind of, now they got it. So Wolfgang and Ben and Brian and the other ones, the Kobolds, they know now how my process works. So when I send it to them, they know what to expect, and they can simply say, no, these mountains should go here instead, and so on. So now it's much more quicker, which means that we can add way more detail and get much further. So it's kind of, but it's a little bit of pain, because I speak visual and think visual terrain wise, but on the other hand, that's why they hire me, because they don't want to think about this. So it's like, yeah, so it's, that's why politicians have speechwriters, because they don't want to sit and figure out and do all the research and whatever. So it's part of it. You hire experts to do things you can't do yourself.
Pretty much.
Right, for sure. So one of the that's a good segue, because one of the subjects that we like to discuss on the show is making, I guess, the non-professional, the game master's life easier.
Yeah.
And so that's all that is, really highlights what it takes to be a professional cartographer. And a lot of times, in particular, the game master who's just sitting at their house and they need to make a map on the fly, or need to make a map for their next session or whatever, they don't have an Adobe Photoshop license or a subscription. They don't have access to all the tools. They certainly don't have any training. So there's a lot of tools out there. I'm getting to a point here. So there's a lot of tools. There are a lot of tools out there that make it easier for the game master to create maps. And what are your, just in generally speaking, what are your thoughts on?
There are so many awesome tools.
Specific ones, yeah.
Yeah, and there's more and more coming. If you want to do, I just got a license today for Dungeon Fog. It's an Austrian company, and I've keep looking at them for like the past year or so. I wasn't in on the Kickstarter, but they started to come on my radar like a year ago or something. And I've seen them getting better and better. And I've tried out the free version. I realized it's awesome. Yeah.
It is.
So that was the thing. And I've used many others, like Otherworld Mapper. It's been a nifty little tool that I used for some stuff, and I'm still searching for the best one to present my maps in, but it will come. And then you have Incarnate is another one that is really cool. It's a browser based, I think, still that you use assets that are in there to do super cool maps that look professional. The only problem is that they have a certain look. And then you have the fantasy the campaign cartographer from Pro Fantasy and the dungeon cartographer and stuff. They are CAD based, so they are a little bit, you need to like the CAD way of doing things. If you're an AutoCAD person and you like to click once and then you click the right mouse button and you hold down shift and then you move a bit and then it looks fantastic. So once you get over the hurdle, they are not artistic. You don't sit and paint like you do in Photoshop. But once you got over the hurdle of learning the basic CAD functions in it, you can do fantastic looking maps in Pro Fantasy's tools. So there is a whole bunch of them that way. And there now, if one of the interesting pro tips, if you want to have a satellite looking map like I do, top down, you go into Google Earth and you simply, or Google Earth in a browser, and you disable all the roads and all the names and all the layers. You just get the photography. Zoom around the world until you find something that looks cool. If you want desert, zoom into the Sahara or Mongolian desert or out in Nevada, Arizona somewhere. Find a location that looks cool, take a screenshot, and voila, there you have your little area in your campground. You can run your encounter and it can look fantastic. And then you take that into to GIMP or something tool, or into Dungeon Fog or something, and simply put your asset on top of it, or straight into Fantasy Grounds. There you have perfect. You can, and no one can say that they don't look good because they look realistic. They look super realistic.
This is realistic.
Yeah, I wish I could do that, but I can't steal from Google and use it. So I have to create every pixel by myself, and I do professionally. But for my own games, I could wholesale just steal some desert here or some jungle or whatever it is and just go straight in.
We're not stealing, we're borrowing.
Exactly, yeah, borrowing. Yeah,
great artists borrow. You know.
Yep, and that doesn't cost a penny. It's for nothing. It doesn't cost a penny, and you have the whole world to play from, and the moon, and Mars, and probably a couple of other planets soon. So
I use that technique. That's why I don't actually render things out 3D, because I do exactly what you're talking about, which explains why, like 3 years ago, every game I ran that year took place in like a loch in Scotland, because there were so many cool places. I'd look at one and be like, ooh, there's an even cooler one over there. And I just scooted my way all around the Lachlan. So
and even in GIMP, or even if you don't use Photoshop and use GIMP, you can kind of put them together and then paint over the ugly bits, and you can kind of build your world bit by bit, and you can make a fantastic looking world that way. That it's simply superb. For your own use, it could be as good as any professional map, if not even better.
Yeah, really. That's certainly one that I'm going to take back for myself. That's great.
And the beauty part too is you can scoot down and look at it.
Exactly. You can even get isometric views from the side. And take them in Photoshop and or GIMP. If you don't want to pay any money, you use an open source GIMP. It's a little bit clunkier in the UI, but it works. It has basically all the function, and you tweak it a little bit. You can put clouds, and then you can work miracles that way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we were talking about Dungeon Fog as one of the examples. I've got a couple that I was going to go over, but Dungeon Fog specifically, you just got this subscription. I bought a subscription. It's only been about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's super impressed. I also was not involved in their Kickstarter, but when I first saw it, it certainly left kind of a lot to be desired in the very beginning, but just like any software package does, in particular Fantasy Grounds. But
one moment, folks, please. Let's find his video picture. He's going black.
All right. That was more of a dig at Jimmy than actual Fantasy Grounds. I really do like Fantasy Grounds. Anyway, Dungeon Fog. Now it is amazing. So I bought 2-minute tabletop. 2-minute tabletop maps. If you're not familiar with him, he's on Facebook. A guy named Ross down in Australia. He creates not only maps for GMs to use generically, but also the fiddly bits, if you will. So the tokens that you can drop on a map.
Assets.
Assets, And so they've now at least since I used it last time, you can incorporate or import all those into Dungeon Fog. And yeah, it is amazing tool. It
Yep.
really is great. And when they get this Project Dios off the ground, when they're cooperating,
There will be cities and whole large area maps, and then tie it in with World Anvil, so you can put all the details in there too. Wow, that's only the virtual tabletop where you actually run the game and do the rolling the die and level up your characters. But it's that close. That's the only thing they're missing. So there are more and more companies moving. They only miss one bit, and they have all the other bits, so to speak. So it will be interesting to see who can kind of tie up the whole package first. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think I was just going to say, I think that we were just joking about this the other day, and I don't want to reveal any of World Anvil's secrets or anything like that, or feel like I am, but it just seems kind of like they've gone about it from the back door, if you will. So they created this awesome world building tool where you can track all of your stuff then going on in your campaign. And now they're incorporating maps. And if you're not familiar with World Anvil, which happens to be the next app that I wanted to talk about with making DMs' lives easier, you can track all that stuff. You can also now put dice rolls in there. So you have the Roll20s and the Fantasy Grounds of the world. But if you're a DM out there that's just using Zoom, you don't need any of this. You can put your map in World Anvil. You can include the dice roll code to roll the dice and click that when you're ready to do it. And I mean, it's almost there, and it kind of seems like they were kind of sneaky about it and went in the back door on the virtual tabletop.
And Dungeon Fog is, when they gang up together, Dungeon Fog already have the lighting effects, and they have the you move the tokens around. So then there's a lot of overlap between the tools, and eventually there will be one tool, but probably not for all the games, but there will be one tool. If you play D&D 5th, there will probably be a package that is perfect for you, and if you play Pathfinder, it might be another one, and so on. So, but it.
What, Matt, wasn't there also Foundry? Wasn't that the other piece that Dungeon Fog them were partnering with that was going to run competition to Roll20 in Fantasy Grounds? Wasn't that what it was called? Foundry, I believe?
Yeah.
So I know there's another piece out there, that puzzle that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's there.
And there's another German company coming out with another campaign management tool that's called Yarps that is coming soon. And they also seem to be a little bit tied in and have some sort of cooperation with Dungeon Fog. So I don't know what's happening here, but there is the market 5 years ago when I bought Realmworks, a tool that I've still used and loved, but now, and 5 years ago there were no competition basically, but now there's plenty. So the market is really and overall as an end user it's kind of fantastic. There will be more tools, better tools, and prices can be kind of kept low that way. So
I think World Anvil is probably pretty smart when they thought of what to build first. If you're going to build a foundational tool, then you make it easy for other vendors to come in and build on top. And who knows, you see other people building stuff, you make good business decisions, and you end up being in the right place at the right time.
And they also done, both Dungeon Fog and World Anvil, are browser-based tools, which are kind of good because you can run it on almost any platform that has a full featured browser, and it's also very easy to reskin things, to install new versions, and to network comes kind of for free. The drawback is that they're a little bit less powerful and a little bit more clunky than if you run in a native application, and you also have to have access to the internet, otherwise you're screwed, you can't use them. So there's drawbacks, but it seems to go more and more towards online tools, and eventually I think that's where we will head.
Cloud-based.
And I'm guessing too there'll be offline sync as a future feature. You'll have the capability to, I'm going camping, I don't have internet, but I still want to run my game.
It is funny you mentioned that, because I was camping last night and I was thinking that exact thing. Is why, or 2 nights ago, why no internet connection, didn't even have a cell phone, and I couldn't do anything with my maps because I've been doing a lot of stuff in Dungeon Fog, as I mentioned. So it's that's certainly a feature that could be useful. And you mentioned campaign cartographer and dungeon cartographer. Man, hats off to you if you're able to figure that out, because that was not worse in the bad sense, but for me it was more difficult to learn than like Photoshop.
Yeah, it's
Man,
for some people they love the CAD, and for me the same thing. It's not. I struggled, and I've done some maps in campaign cartographer and stuff, but I never. They can look fantastic, but I never got over the clunky way of doing it. It's kind of backwards for me. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
It took me forever just to figure out how to. I tend to draw first, like physically draw, and I'll draw really complex levels of stuff, and then how to bring that in and be able to use it in Photoshop was challenging for me at first because I had so much subtlety already established that I felt I couldn't paint over it correctly. And but eventually I just learned how to. I bought a tablet and I learned how to draw with a tablet as well as I could draw with a pencil.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think the other one that we talked about real quick was Incarnate. And Incarnate's a great tool I've found. And you did mention, and I totally agree with you, is that if you see an Incarnate map, you're definitely going to recognize that as an Incarnate map. There's not a lot of versatility there as far as being able to choose different icons. The look is definitely Incarnate. So if you see that, I guess I bought the professional or the commercial one, for example, and anybody who sees that in print is going to know that it's an Incarnate one. But super quick, very nice, and
over time that might change because as soon as if they can make more assets that look different, then you can build. They can build many different styles rather than just one. Fantasy Grounds or campaign cartographer was that way. You only looked one way to begin with. Now you have many different. You can have hundreds of different styles. You can even make Mike's sleigh maps in it that looks very the real thing because it's his assets in there. So I think that way, and that's simply something I have to realize that in 10 years, what I do now for a living, anyone can do. So I have to up my game and learn new tools all along, so to speak.
Yeah. maybe, but I would say, and not to blow smoke, but I'm just saying, as an artist as well, I feel like there still is the artistic intention and the artistic ability. Like it's like having taste.
Yeah.
So you can make a beautiful thing with a tool, but there's still something like if I want a beautiful map, I first of all don't want it to be replicable by anybody else really easily. Especially if it's for a product. And then second of all, I want the interaction of the artist with my idea.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody just dragging color forms around on a background, That's great for quick stuff, but I mean if it was for publication or for something that was very serious.
Then it's different. Yeah. But and also I think that the role of professionals in a lot of stuff like this will probably change. You will be role model as much as a producer. So to speak.
Correct.
You will inspire others on how to use the tools and how to do it, and also how to produce assets for tools will probably be a big part of my job in the future.
Yeah, I think that's very likely.
I was just going to say, I was going to pile onto that and say, I think just as you mentioned before, where books are going to be the tabletop, the centerpiece for the coffee table, and hey, look at my collection. I think the same thing's going to be true for the maps that are in those. You're still forever going to have the guy or gal that's going to be able to hand draw a map, and that's going to be far preferred for a professional publication for a long time to come. I don't see the Incarnates, and nothing against the apps because I use the heck out of them because I don't have an artistic bone in my body.
That's not true.
But that will never replace hand drawn stuff like you're doing for sure.
Yeah, I think it also just comes down to the idea that, like right now, every GM makes their own maps.
But that is starting to disappear because there's in the beginning when I started gaming, that was the only option. There were hardly any adventures out there, so you had to invent your own adventures. You have to write your own campaigns. And then Greyhawk came around, and I used the base of it, and I just invented my own stuff in there, so to speak. So you use it as a canvas. But today there's a lot of gaming groups and DMs who simply run adventure paths, and nowadays I think that could be a very viable, depending on what game, but if you run Pathfinder, for instance, that come out like quarterly or something, and it's a big book, and it comes with all the material you want, and it's awesome, and you can tweak it as much or as little as you want and run awesome. I've run I've been playing a couple of campaigns, and it's been awesome. So there is now so many cool different ways to game that didn't use the homebrew was the only option 25 years
Right.
ago, but
yeah.
now there is one of the cool options. But you can simply take the canned adventure and run it as intended, and some players seem to prefer it too, because for them it's like, oh, if you play a game, then oh, have you run that game? Then oh, you run that module and you run that module, and it's more like a hit list. Like I played this much because I played all these modules, so I'm
Right.
and they look
Yeah.
at it as a game that way, and that's a perfect, for me, it's a perfect viable way of playing role-playing games.
Oh,
But it's
for
not
sure.
really my way, but it's yeah.
Yeah, I guess I agree with all that. I guess I just meant more from the standpoint of every GM needs a map.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
very
It's
few
an
do without a map.
integral. Yeah.
So where they might have previously had kind of a crummy looking map,
Yeah.
now they can go to Incarnate and have a way nicer looking crummy map.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep. Yep.
And I think that's great because it allows people to have more beautiful things. I want
Mhm.
people to have beautiful things.
Yep. Yep.
I make my art because I want people to look at it and go, "Wow, that's cool."
Yeah, and I think that makes for better games. It's in DM or GM who's inspired by, created or found this awesome location that looks cool and then presented to the players. That's like going to the movies, music and the backdrops and stuff that adds to the flavor of and the atmosphere of the game. So I think it's really important.
Yeah. Well, that is just mind blowing. I'm so glad that we got this time to really dig into like the industry aspects of it and the how you do it aspects and like the thing that drives us to have good visuals and maps to help us tell these stories. I can't thank you enough for, like, first of all, for making your art.
Thank you.
I'm very thankful. I have spent a lot of time. I'm, first of all, not a fan of Greyhawk. I know. I'm a Forgotten Realms guy.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Watch out, guys.
Caveat issued. I have spent the last 2 weeks just staring at your Greyhawk map, and I think I kind of like Greyhawk now.
Oh, yeah. I got a lot of people that got into Greyhawk simply because they found my maps and kind of like them. I get an email a week saying that and asking me about the details and where is all this cool thing. And the interesting thing is now you have whole new generations of gamers who are not aware of the stuff that happened in the
That's
80s and even in the 90s. And that's so cool because now you can kind of inspire. You have new gamers who never seen or heard about it. So yeah. And when I play in other campaign, I don't want to play in Greyhawk. I want to play in other worlds because that way I want to be oohed and awed and kind of not knowing it, so to speak. So for me, I prefer to actually be a player in other campaigns and homebrew or other settings, and then to be inspired and then run my own games in Greyhawk.
Well, maybe one of these times when we meet up at a convention, as I'm sure we will at some point, we'll pull you into my Call of Cthulhu game, and that'll be a world you're unfamiliar with. Trust me.
Yep. Cool. That's awesome. Yep.
So we're kind of getting toward the end here. We got a few minutes here at the end, and I think I'm going to kick it over to Matt real quick. But this is stuff we can all talk about. These are just some questions that the fans have been sending in, and I'm just going to kick it over to Matt right now. He can ask, and we can just kick it around.
So a couple things. First, I saw Beth. I'm not sure that she's been in the whole time, but I have seen her start to chat here pretty recently, and one of our patrons. So thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you, Beth.
All right. I have several questions. Actually, I have a. Oh yeah, thank you. So Jimmy, you want to talk to him real quick about how to get entered into the giveaway, which is the Mega Bundle from Total Party Guild Games?
Yep. So we have a giveaway. Brian's birthday. He was celebrating it in Open Gaming Store. Has his basically TPK's published PDF library that they're giving away. 60 some odd PDF.
Yeah, that is a lot of PDFs.
Entire library. And so I believe if you do exclamation ticket or 5, I think. I think it's there. It will, or tickets. I'm trying to remember the command here. Sorry. No, that's a ticket, you dork. Anyway, you can enter. And
Jimmy is the commander of this ship.
I'm commander. I was setting it up, and shush now. We just kind of pulled this out because I am also. So the reason we're doing this is I reached out to Brian. the week of the 12th of August through the 17th, my birthday weekend, I'm going to be running giveaways and prizes the whole week. I do it every year. We're going to give away dice. We're going to give away the Essentials new kit of D&D from Wizards of the Coast. We're going to give away the full PDF version for Total Particular Names and the hardback copy of the Wizards of the Coast Acquisitions Incorporated book. I bought that, and we're going to
copy. It's
give
awesome.
it away. So we'll be doing that all week.
I have one other special guest. Sorry to show here. She's getting ready to go to bed.
Hello.
Hi.
All right. Good night.
Good night, Dad.
Okay.
So anyway,
yeah.
enter the giveaway, and I'm going to repost it here while Matt's talking.
Yes. I was going to talk about some stuff. So yeah, I've got 3 canned or cleverly picked questions that we're calling questions from the couch. One of them we have beat that dead horse with a stick. Oh, whatever. A couple times. So I may not go over that one, but I do have 2 that are great. So, and this is for everybody, including Anna, as a game master. How long do you spend prior to a game session prepping for your players? And there's a tag on to that. Have you spent more or less time, and how did that affect your game? So we'll go to our guest first, Anna.
For me, it depends if I'm having. It's one of the first. If it's, I start a new campaign in a new area of Greyhawks. I'm breaking new grounds. Then I might spend 40 hours preparing the first session, so to speak. But then follow-up sessions will be less and less, because then I know the NPCs, I have sketched out the area and so on. So then I might need no hardly any preparation. I would just think about a little bit what happened last time and also what's going to what are the possibilities for the next time, so to speak. And then it's short little note, make sure the players write down what happens. That's one of the things. So I always hand out XP for players who make me wonderful notes of what happens, so to speak. So that's takes down on prep time a lot. So it's, for me, it's the more you're into the campaign, the easier it gets. Then sessions basically play themselves after a while. But the first one's lots of work, several weeks of work for me.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can absolutely identify with that. And as we kind of joked about earlier, is putting all that time in, and then in the very first session, the players are derailing what you have in mind. So yeah.
Yep.
And so, have you ever? I guess in that case, a lot of front-loaded information, and then little segmented updates as you go along.
Yeah.
Do you find that? So it's obviously successful for you, but do you find that is easy for you to maneuver or to change things when your players do something unexpected for you?
Yes, because I run a sandbox, so I don't assume that will be one outcome. I have no clue on how the campaign will end or anything. I just create a bit of a world for the players to play in, and all the stuff that are there, and just let it happen. That's why I need to front load a hell of a lot of stuff, and then just let the players play with it. But so there's a lot of, but the good thing with that is that a lot of that work can be reused later, even if the players run off and run in one random direction and stay on that course. I can place the next campaign in the same area and have basically, I can reuse all the prep. So that's why I prep campaigns in different areas, and then I can kind of put more and more stuff into it. So it's a lot of front load that pays off over time.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that, and my answer will be the exact opposite of what you just said. So I will get.
Yeah, but it depends on how you run the game. If you're story driven rather than run the sandbox, then you need to do the opposite.
Yeah, for sure. Jimmy, what about you?
What's that?
So we have this segment called "Questions from the Couch," in which all of our members answer one specific question.
Captain.
I was looking at something trying to figure out the contest, and you just softballed me upside the head there while I wasn't listening. I apologize. Yep. I got caught. So
I will give you a second to think about, as a game master, how long do you spend prior to a game session prepping for your players?
Oh, I answered that on the Facebook page, and the answer was, what is this word prep?
Oh,
Okay.
you're a seed of a pants GM or DM.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah, I'll tell you, to be honest with you, with the stream and the games I'm running, it's mostly almost strictly all the modules. And so I have gone in and it's, so yes, it is some reading up ahead beforehand. They're getting to know the modules now, running them over and over. It's making it easier to know what's coming up and where the players can go. Cause I've got a limited area where I'm going to keep them at, not true railroading, but I am going to keep them inside boundaries, so to speak, to accomplish the game. And so, yeah, for me on the prep side, definitely different from what Danny would be doing, who is prepping out and running a much bigger arena than I am. There's no doubt. So, 20 sides. Thanks for the raid.
No, that's good. That's a good answer. There's two completely opposite paradigms there.
Yep.
Where you're talking sandbox and let the players do what they want, and the story-driven module we won't go so far as to say railroad, but there's specific start and end.
Yep.
So,
That's true.
absolutely.
Yep.
I think that's two different DM styles. There's nothing wrong with either one of them at all. Danny, what about you?
So I'll keep this mercifully short. I don't run modules generally. I tend to start with a theme that is drawn from current events. Even though I run a high fantasy game. So like one of the things that I've been thinking about the last few years is the concepts of liberty and tyranny. So most of my games have that as their central core. There's a force for one and a force for the other.
Yep.
And then I will just watch movies. I'll read books. I'll pull snippets. And I just keep index cards laying everywhere in my house. And I just jot little notes down. And when I've got about 20 notes, that's my mind map. And I just pick a spot. Sometimes I pick it randomly. I'll just literally walk up to the board with my eyes closed and point, and that's where the game's going to start. And then it's all about creating characters. So the prep that I do is I take 2 or 3 sessions to make characters with the players.
Mhm.
And the first session we do about a third of their character sheet, and then we play a little bit and we figure out why you have that background. They don't pick one, they earn one, and so on and so forth. So by the time we get to second level, which is where we emerge usually from this, because I hate playing first level campaigns anymore, they all know each other, hate each other, love each other. They know secrets from each other. They know all sorts of things. And I haven't prepped much more than probably on the game 2 or 3 hours. And this is for like a 10-week, thing. And then we just start and I see what they do. And whatever they do, I just add to it. The mind map grows and I just make little notes of things they've done, things they can do. It's a sandbox for sure. And so I would say that I prep about an hour or so in between games. And I probably prep about 5 hours before games, but then I do character development for like 18 hours, 3 6-hour sessions probably.
Yep.
But I'm a theater of the mind runner. I mean, I have maps. I can run any kind of game. I got more fucking done Dwarven Forge terrain than you can shake a stick at. And I use that every once in a while. It's great. But usually it's just sketching on the whiteboard, talking, getting people to nod. Okay, we're all in the same space, and then we just play through. So,
Yeah. And we've talked about that before, and I really envy your ability to do that, run the games, and more specifically create that immersive world that you do. Because I am, like I said, the opposite of what Anna was talking about before, in that I don't run modules like Jimmy, so I don't pick up an adventure and run it. I tend to write my own stuff, but it's all story driven. So I have a start and an end point, and I know where I have left and right bounds, which is unfortunate. I don't necessarily like to play that way. I just don't have a ton of time to prep if I'm going to run something. So I'll write my own adventure. I'll make my own maps. I'll create my own story, maybe even my own monsters, but it definitely has its left and right bounds. And then I'm like, oh, hey, I've got a game session tonight. I better go make the map. And so, I spend an hour or 2 hours before the session trying to create the maps. And for me, this entire episode that we've been running, this entire conversation we've been having tonight has resonated with me greatly, because I live and breathe by my maps. I can talk a story to just about anything that I have in front of me, but I have to have the maps. And that was one of the other questions. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get to it, but that was one of the other questions I had was, are the old school black and white maps with just pencil hex or pencil square 5-foot squares, are those sufficient, or do you prefer these really detailed maps that you can get down to the, you can see the cutlery on the table? And for me, my answer to that, to kind of sum up how I run a game, I want as much detail as possible. So when a person says, "Hey, what's that red dot there?" Oh, that's a mushroom by the, it's a mushroom outside the table or outside the building, whatever. So I'm kind of I'm a little bit in between, sounds like everybody. So that's really cool. We got 4 game masters here with 4 completely different methods of prep.
Yep.
Really way to end this session.
I feel like if I'm showing it to the players, I want it to look like one of Anna's maps. If I'm using it only for myself, those old non-repro blue ones from 1981, they're perfectly fine.
When it comes to dungeon maps, I love to do. I had these plastic tiles that you draw using dry erase markers on, and it was perfect. I described the things as I drew, and you could just extend it in any direction, so the players had no clue of which direction to go. And I just have a little sketch, and that was it. And then I simply filled it in as I spoke and as we drew the what happened, so to speak. And to me, that was a wonderful way of getting my creativity out, and if the game kind of continued to flow while I was doing it, that was not waiting. And the cool thing is I drew a lot of areas. I showed the Greyhawk map, and then I kind of drew the city or the village or whatever as they were going. And I also used my cell phone to just take pictures of it. And then I put that aside and used that as a reference for when they came back 10 years later, it looked the same way. And in real time, so to speak, if they come back to the same area. And that's important. So you have consistency. When you run a sandbox, you have to have consistency. You have to feel like it's not reinvented. It's the same world, just 6 months later, or whatever it is in game time. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we are running up hard on the end of our time tonight with Anna, but I think Matt would like to just, we got to get a couple quick things in right before we close out. Why don't you take that, Matt?
Oh God, cut off guard. Okay, so I apologize. I was fiddling the fiddly bits. Yes, so thank you, Anna, 100 times over.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Anna.
Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Yep, absolutely. You're welcome back anytime, and certainly look forward to seeing you at conventions coming up. World Anvil, we've talked about them several times. They have a Kickstarter with Project Dios and Dungeon Fog, and what's the oh gosh, the DM's name's escaping me at the moment. They're a partner.
Yeah, you would go there.
Yeah, we will get it later. Yeah. It'll be in the notes. So they've got a Kickstarter, July 22nd, that's going to bring everything that we've been talking about together into one big application that you can use to create your world. So you've got your world building, you've got your module creating, you've got your dungeon maps all the way from worlds, from the world scale down to the city, down to the dungeon. All that's going to be included in Project Dios, and that's going to be starting on July 22nd.
The singularity is coming.
Absolutely. If you have been watching and you've been enjoying the show, please consider joining us on Patreon. It helps us pay for everything that's going on, all of our time, and going out for the giveaways that we are about to provide. So if you would like, we are on Patreon. That is /WizardsCouch, patreon.com/WizardsCouch. We would love it if you would join us. We have a couple of our patrons here tonight, including Anna, who was our very first one.
Woo! Booyah!
Started. If you are interested in Roll20, you play or use Roll20 as an application after the show, after we conclude here, I'll show a couple of tips on how to add a map, add terrain, switch through the layers, and resize. And I think that's all I had.
Well, great. I would just like to say from all the wizards here, thank you so much, Anna, for being here tonight. As we said earlier in the show, Anna is the curator and creator of probably the most ambitious and awesomely detailed and beautiful to dive deep into Greyhawk and Flannass maps that you will ever find. We'll definitely get a link up for that. And also her work with Wolfgang Bauer's Cobalt Press on the Midgard stuff and other places. I'm sure you can find more at her address. We'll get that up as well. Keep in mind, you can find out all about our show and what we're doing on social everywhere. What are you laughing about?
Sorry, I ended the giveaway and Beth won it. So Beth, I had to reach out to her. She just won Brian's full library of published works.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
congrats,
Well,
awesome.
Beth.
that just goes to show that's tabletop role playing in a that is a critical, right?
Yep.
So it's either critical or fumble. I don't know which. So you can find us everywhere on your social media stuff: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Wizards Couch /Wizards Couch. You can find us here 9:00 every other Monday CST with the actual live show with lovely guests like Anna, and then we're going to probably be rebroadcasting parts of this or reposting parts of this on Facebook or not Facebook. YouTube toward the end of this week. So follow along, join in the discussion. I'd just like to thank everybody who watched tonight. I'm Danny Grimes, and for Casey Riff and Jimmy and the absent Brian Berg, I just say thank you very much for all the time you spent with us, and have a good one.
We'll see you Friday night for Lost Minds of Fandover with a bunch of new players. All right?
Yeah, please.
Tune back in Friday. Y'all be good. Thanks for watching.
to put a map in, layers, and resizing, and then we'll be done. Just a quick.
Is this live?
And we just went back to live.
Got it.
Yes. So the three of us, and I'm going to zoom in on your window, Matt, because you can share your screen. All right. So
yeah. Hi.
Hi.
We're
Hi, Matt.
professionals.
Nice to see you today.
We're back. All right. So the question I was going to ask before we went back was, how do I share my screen in Zoom? But I think I figured it out.
Magic.
All right. Can you see me?
Sure can.
We can see the screen. Ugh.
Now, this
Hey,
map,
there we go.
this map, for example,
Go on.
it's great. It's super informational. No, I didn't mean anything negative. I just meant like this
I
map,
did.
for example, is great.
Okay. So what we were going to talk. Let's get to talk about. This is an example.
I like how lined up everything is.
2-minute tabletop. I drew the background. So the background was drawn in Dungeon Fog. Everything else, all the tokens, all the assets on top, with the exception of the characters, are 2-minute tabletop. So all this stuff is something
cool.
that you can, even as a,
It is nice. It's nice and soft looking.
yeah, if you've got a just your homebrew game that you're running, all of these assets are available for free. I had to buy the commercial version so that we could publish some of this stuff, but
Yep.
It is simple, direct, tells the exact story that you want to tell.
This guy and Dyson Logos, I really like both of them. It's similar looking.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, it doesn't get super detailed. Let's see, what's this? Let's zoom down here to the. So I mean, yeah, you can see his tree stump there is not exactly. There's not a lot of detail there, but you can absolutely tell that it's a tree stump.
Yeah.
Or a tent, or whatever you want to do, and the gemstones or whatever here. So anyway,
Well, there's always that war between making it so realistic, but also just making it gestural, so you at least know what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so Roll20. We are talking about adding a map. So in your blank Roll20 screen, you're going to come up here to this little page toolbar. Add. You're going to create a new page. You're going to go down to that page, and now you have a completely blank screen.
So this is just for the map, right? In Roll20?
Yeah, so this is, right, exactly. This is the map that you're going to create. We have Anna's map that we talked about before. I'm going to drag and drop that on.
That place you used to live, this uploading thing could have been like 40 minutes.
Would have been impossible. Yeah, we absolutely could not have done this before.
Oh, I love maps like this. I love just the little vignette. You know there's going to be a fight.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was asking her, because this is the map that he was demoing during the show, and I was like, so when people commission maps like this, is it something that they're going to put a little camp here? Or? Nope. It's pretty much just going to be a battle. There's a battle scene going on. You know it. All right.
I found it fascinating that she renders out all of the terrain. That is, crazy in a good way, but that's crazy.
Yeah, and I am really blanched out right now, aren't I? All the white in the background. All right. My face isn't on there anyway, so that's great.
No, it's just you're just seeing the drawing. That's it.
Yeah, I totally agree, though. I mean, the level of detail and effort that she puts into making the maps is way beyond anything I'd be capable of doing.
Now,
All right.
who was that artist who was next to us at GaryCon, the next room over? She was friends with Randy Price. She's another famous artist, cartographer.
Gary.
Someone was telling me that like her computer setup, because of the size of the map she does, she's got like this liquid cooled 3 machines like networked together. It's some insane setup. I was like, what kind of maps are you making?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know. Although I will say that I did have a map, or not a map, the banner made for CobaltCon this year. She sent it back over because I told her the dimensions, and I am completely ignorant when it comes to printing picture dimensions. And she sent it back over, and it was like 110 gigs.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
how am I going to get this to you? Because Dropbox won't accept it. I'm like, well, yeah, I guess it probably won't. I don't know specifically who you're talking about, but yeah, those image sizes can get crazy huge. We talked about grids in Fantasy Grounds, and the same thing's true with Roll20. You don't want a map with grids on it if you can help it. I mean, there's ways to get around it, but by and large, the application will try and help you as best it can. So as you can see here, currently the grid size on Anna's map is smaller than the grid size on Roll20. So what I would do here is I would go down, I would come back over to my map and just turn it off. So I don't want grids. I don't want grids on her map.
Grids.
She already has it. All right, so now we go up here. I just put it in the corner, and I'm going to drag and drop it. So now we've got a full-size square map. It currently, based on these icons here, and normally every time you drag and drop it into Roll20, it's going to go into the objects and tokens layer. And you don't want that for your maps. Similar to what Jimmy was talking about earlier, you don't want the players manipulating what's on the screen. So if I left it here and the players logged in, they'd have the ability to screw.
So the object and tokens layer is player operable.
Yep. So for right now, I'm going to right click, layers, send it to the map layers. You notice all that stuff disappears. Now, if I need to manipulate the map layer, I simply go up here to the left and select maps and backgrounds. And now, once again, I can edit it. All right, now back to objects and tokens. I've got my terrain tokens set up here, and these are some of those tokens I was just talking about from 2-Minute Tabletop. And now I can just select what I want. So similar to what Jimmy was talking about, I can, in this case, Ross has set up the fire and the campfire ring. So I'll drop the ring in here. Oops.
Oh, nice.
Selected a couple things. So we got the campfire ring, and we'll just scale it down to fit a 5-foot square, and then we'll drop to front. We'll drop the fire on top of it.
That's pretty slick.
Yeah, so now we've got the campfire, and this particular one is supposed to be a bedroll or something. We can unselect some stuff if I want. He even went so far as to put a spit. So I've got a spit here I can put in.
Got a board to stick on that spit? It looks like you do.
Wait for it.
Oh, no way. Zoom in, man. I got to see that pig up close.
All right. Actually, I need to zoom in anyway.
That is cool.
All right. So we want to put this to the front so that our pig is underneath it. There we go.
I love this art too. This art is so, like, I'm much more used to seeing stuff like that canoe up there where it's more detailed. I love this rough, more like cartoony style.
Yeah. And I mean, it's really, if you think about it, it's all that's necessary to create the image, right? To get the image in the player's mind. So now we got a pig roasted on a spit right over a campfire. We got that there. Oops, that's a little too big.
So can you rotate things at like all sorts of angles?
Yeah, for sure. So we got this guy here. You notice the crosshairs comes up. You can start to rotate it.
See, for me, anything, I was kind of taking a dig on your map earlier, just because I never want to see things lined up too well. I'm always imagining the people who put up the tents, they don't give a shit about like where things are laid out. They just put up their tents.
How will this look from space?
Right, exactly. I love that you can move it with so much just random degrees.
Yeah.
Is that the same way in Fantasy Grounds, Jimmy?
What now? Yep. Say that again. Can I? Yes.
You can do all that detail. Yeah.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. So absolutely. You can definitely do it. And in fact, it's a little bit easier in Fantasy Grounds than Roll20 sometimes. So yeah, there's your camp. Now, one of the things that, just to finish up real quick, one of the things that Jimmy was showing in Fantasy Grounds was that all this stuff is tokens, and currently this is controllable or movable by the players. So what you would want to do is switch this to the map layer and make sure that they don't have the ability to mess with it.
Mess with it. Yep.
You can instead, and I probably should have done this in the first place, but I wanted to show you that you can just easily right click and move stuff around. What you can also do is develop in the map layer, and everything that you would drag and drop would just be in there automatically.
Yeah, that is super cool.
Yeah, real quick to sum up. So this is the Zephyr Devils for our new game that's coming up. So this is a bad guy. We'll zoom
You have to zoom in on that bad guy. Whoa.
Yeah. So these are some baddies from the Forest Queen's Radiance that's coming out. They're medium-sized creatures, so you want to scale them down to here. And you probably noticed the GM layer. So what you can do in Roll20 is pre-position your critters, and you can do this in Fantasy Grounds too. But what you want to do as a game master is pre-position your critters. So you sit this in the GM layer. You notice that kind of faded out. That's not visible to the characters, to the player. So everything so far, even if it's in the map layer, if it is out, it's visible. They can't manipulate any of this stuff right here, but it's visible to them. This guy this is kind of grayed out. That is not visible to them. And so then as the GM, what you want to do is you go into your GM info overlay, select it, and move it back to the token layer, and bam! Now there's a baddie on the screen.
This goes back to the prep thing too, because what you've shown us here, Matt, is that with about 10 minutes and a decent cadre of assets, you can pop a map. You could just for your home game, not for publication, but you could grab a map off online that suits your needs with some ruins or whatever on it that you like, grab a bunch of assets, pop it down, and you could even set up one encounter at a time, and during the beer break at your game, set up another quick map.
Yeah, and to Anna's point about or actually to your point, you were saying earlier how you're on the road, just walking in front of your players. This is absolutely something I've done several times. If they go off the rails and they insist on going left when I'm trying to maneuver them right, I will absolutely go into Google and search for map XYZ and start dropping these assets onto the table. So yeah.
Matt, did you see the question and right. Twitch?
I missed it.
Yeah, the Ace is high. Can you show fog like as heroes are coming upon this? So, yep.
Yeah, sure.
So while Matt grabs his fog, I just wanted to ask a quick question. So you guys both use these tools because you play remotely with remote players.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
I do not yet. I hope to. Part of being on this channel is getting that opportunity. But I use it just at my table at home. So I don't have people needing to roll dice or keep track of their characters on the screen or any of that stuff. I don't need that functionality. They've got their sheet in front of them. They're rolling their own physical dice and all that sort of thing. But the tool, I think, that I use a free tool called Map Tool.
Tools.
Super creative. And but it does all this same stuff, not quite as slickly on the player interaction stuff. But I find it really interesting to think that the players would be moving these tokens. Like in my world, they just tell me where they want to move, and I make a legal move for them, which for me is kind of fun because then I always know exactly where everyone is. It's like a double check for me. So maybe if we ever revisit this, I'll show how I use it because it's nowhere near as extensive as you guys are, but it still is really useful.
Yeah, I suppose that's an adaptation of needing to play for a disparate of players. Yeah, for sure. Because I'll tell you for sure, when I started using Roll20, it was because I wanted to display it on a TV for the players that were in the room. Our group, up until about 2014, is that right? Yeah, around there. It doesn't seem like Roll20's been out for that long, but it's been 6 or 8 years now.
Yeah. But
for the first 2 or 3 or 4 years, absolutely. It was the TV in front of everybody that was in the room, and the DM was manipulating it from his laptop. So yeah, I 100% identify with that.
Yeah, it's just cool. The zoom in and zoom out. The zoom in and zoom out in Fog of War, absolutely the two coolest things.
All right, and just in case anybody doesn't know, 2-button mouse click on Roll20 will maneuver the map around. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Nice.
Okay, so one of the questions was Fog of War. Yeah. if I hold the Alt key and scroll mouse out, I can get the mouse or the map zoomed out. And then we go here to back to your page toolbar. You want to go back to your page. In this case, it's this last one here, page settings. And it's as easy as doing Fog of War enabled here. So you can set the opacity for the game master himself. If you wanted to set it all the way dark so you couldn't see anything, I suppose you could do that.
That's playing in pro mode, yo. I can't see shit either.
Yeah, you can read the tooltip there, but yeah, you could totally like, oh, I know this map by heart, and set it to all black. But yeah, set it to what you want and then click OK. You'll notice that the screen darkened a little bit, even for the game master, as we designated. And so now you know, as the GM, that's your cue that the rest of the map is dark, and the players are seeing a completely black screen. What you want to do for to reveal that is here the eyeball and reveal areas, and it's just a mouse click, left mouse click, and drag. And now the players can see that. One thing that Roll20 doesn't advertise very well is shift click. So if you do a, oh, we've updated our hotkeys. Great. This is a perfect time to find that out.
Yeah. Hey, we've changed the entire control scheme. Good luck.
That is awesome. What a perfect time for we've updated our hotkeys. All right. So anyway, a shift click, and you can bring your players right to shift and hold rather, as will bring the players to that area. So 100 times I have had the screen black and the players have maneuvered themselves around wherever they're trying to find where the map's at, and they don't know what's going on. And so you can, and it's not working for me. Nice. Thanks, Roll20. I'm going to reload real quick.
Just be thankful you didn't invent this program. Like, this isn't really egg on your face, you know?
Oh, no. It's just a demo on how to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you, my personal group calls it a shift ping, but if you hit shift and click, you can see that it's moved. The DM is moving the view.
Oh, it's like centering the view on your phone on Google Maps.
For the players, yeah.
It's pulling you around.
So inevitably, you have got Fog of War on, and the player has tried to find out where they can view, and everything's black. And they're like, okay, now that you reveal a space, you can shift click and bring everybody that's playing to that view. Just as a side note, one of the controversial things about Roll20, and I'm not sure if this is the same in Fantasy Grounds, is that you can't set the elevation. So if I want to have the whole map out like this, and I expect my players, I'm going to reveal some more areas, I expect my players to be able to see this whole thing. So I've got this whole scenario drawn out. Well, Joe Fighter may have his screen all the way zoomed in, and as the GM, I have no control over that. And that's one of the unfortunate things about Roll20 is that you can't, as the GM, control that. So anyway, that was a little bit longer than I wanted to go, but I wanted to kind of give you some.
Can I ask a real quick question, Matt? I know we're running over a little bit, but I would like to know a couple things. Sure. Can you zoom back over to the fire?
I can.
And these are things that I'm used to doing in map tools, so I'm saying it from that perspective, not that it's that important really. But could you essentially assign a light to that fire so that the players could see the fire illuminated, just illuminating the area it illuminates, but it would be black in between that illumination and them?
Yeah.
Like they could see the fire in the distance.
Yeah, you'll see that this is still a token.
Gotcha.
So what you want to do is double click on it, and it'll pull up this.
Oh, auras. Yep, I see now.
It'll pull it up. Yep. So we can do. This is probably an entirely different segment, but you can in Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds as well. You can set up. Actually, is Fantasy Grounds there yet? They're definitely going to be with Unity. Are they there with Light View?
No, not on this version. All in Unity. So. Yep.
Yeah. So we'll show it. I can show this in another segment on how to do light view, but basically you would set this to be, let's say, 25 feet. That's the campfire.
Yup.
You can see the light there now. So if I had enabled, we'll look at it real quick. If I had enabled dynamic lighting.
That's what I was wondering. Yep. I saw that feature earlier.
I haven't drawn anything. So there's actual, I'll show it real quick. I'm not going to do it, but I will show where it's at. If you go in here and you go to dynamic lighting, now I have the ability to draw polygon lines. And you go in and do a polygon line and you start, you draw around your campfire, and that represents a wall for the app. So if you have a polygon line drawn around this campfire, that, as far as the program is concerned, that's a wall. So if you have a dynamic, if your campfire is lit, then it's only going to show you right there around where you've put all those polygon lines. Pardon me. And we can talk about that more, but that's what this lighting system's for. So now you can.
Cool. I see the other thing where like a character could have a light with them, and as they move, it exposes the dark. That's cool too.
Yeah, for sure. So what you would want to do in this case, we'll get in again. I think this is probably a good segment for next time. But what you would do is you would do this for a character. So the character icon in this case,
Right.
that's a character. You would say they've got a torch, which is a 15-foot radius, and that guy has this. And so now when they're walking around the dungeon, all they see, if it's outside of their light radius, they don't see it.
It pushes the darkness back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was really cool for running us through that. I think actually these would be great little segments to have more frequently. I don't know what the people out in chat think, but I think some of these quick tutorials to show that it's not rocket science and that you can do this pretty easily and create it's a pretty complicated encounter right here. You got lighting, you've got pieces, you got your various set pieces, you got monsters. I mean, that's pretty well laid out.
I love it. Yep.
Yeah. So that's absolutely the idea was just to provide a couple of quick tips for the applications. And I know Jimmy has a ton of them as well. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yep.
Thanks guys for sticking around. And
Yep.
Yeah, thanks to everybody in chat who showed up. Please like and share and let us know what you think and let other people know if you like it.
Friday night.
Friday night, Vandelver, lost mines. Those mines are lost. You got to find them.
Vandelver, they are still lost.
They're going to be lost forever, Casey.
Our
You know
minds are lost.
Valid.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. All right. I think we're done, gentlemen.
Peace out.
Be good. Folks, take care. See you later.
Night.